All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'll go ahead and let the committee secretary know she can begin her recording. And welcome to the Senate Committee on Growth and Infrastructure. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Senator Brooks.
Here.
Senator Hammond.
Here.
Senator Pickard.
I'm here.
Senator Spearman.
Here.
Chair Harris.
Here, there are five members present. Just a quick reminder, please be courteous and respectful with others during the meeting, even if you disagree with another person's position. General reminder for all of us, for those participating on Zoom, please be sure to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. For the general public, the building is still closed. We have multiple ways to engage with us. Please take a look at our website for the opinion poll, to submit written testimony. You can find that email address on the agenda. If you have any questions on how to participate, you can email our committee manager, whose email address is also on the agenda. All right. First today, we have Senate Bill 279, and I will welcome the Minority Leader, Senator Settelmeyer, to begin whenever he's ready.
Thank you, Chair Harris and Committee on Growth and Infrastructure. I appreciate the opportunity to introduce Senate Bill 279. Again, this is Senator James Settelmeyer representing Senate District 17, which I have the pleasure of representing all of Douglas, Lyon, Churchill, and Story counties. Of course, what's interesting with that is that some people call me the father of Uber, since I was the chair of the committee that brought it into being. But it's kind of funny because in my community in Douglas County, we have one taxi. And that kind of brought about the necessity in more rural aspects of Nevada. Finding individuals for transportational needs always becomes to calling up your friend. And I remember talking to the previous chair of Commerce and Labor way back when, and having the discussion of how many times we were woken up by friends sometimes to be given a ride, which, generally if your friend's in need, you know, they're definitely a friend in need is a friend indeed, and you give them a ride, especially because a lot of times they were intoxicated. And we saw with the concept of the transportation network companies coming about, we did see a very large drop in the state of Nevada, and many individuals directly attributed that directly to the ability of them to get to individuals so fast. There seems to be, at least according to law enforcement and discussions, that if you are having a few too many beverages and you realize that you should not be driving, you'll try to call somebody, and if they don't show up in 15 to 20 minutes, well, you're pretty sure you're sober now, so you might as well drive home. And sadly, that's what people did. Unfortunately, when this language was crafted way back when, we stuck in what seemed very appropriate, that surge pricing should not be allowed when a state is under a statewide emergency. We never had any concept that a statewide emergency could last as long as the pandemic has so far, or could last. And in that respect, the transportation network companies have seen a situation that without the increased economic incentive to drivers to be able to, again, receive more funds, when the need existed, we've seen a very large drop in the number of drivers that are out there. And as an example, the average wait time, I'm now told, at the airport in Las Vegas is 45 minutes. I've had several individuals, due to the fact I was so involved with the legislation a long time ago, tell me about their canceled rides down in the Las Vegas area and how they then couldn't make their flight. And to me, that seemed problematic, to say the least. And again, with the surge pricing, people will be more willing to pay it, in my opinion, because they need the rides. And if you look at the app, if you happen to be down in Las Vegas area on a weekend night, I've had friends that looked at it 2, 3 o'clock in the morning that have sent me screenshots. There's only 2 or 3 cars out there. With that being said, Chair, we are trying to work off of a proposed amendment that was sent over. Hopefully everyone has it. If not, I apologize for not getting it to you sooner. To be honest, after the second COVID shot, I'm unfortunately reliving some of my symptoms from having COVID back in November. Not very much fun, I'll give you that. That being said, the amendment tries to address an issue that the organizations are indicating, the TNCs, that they kind of need consistency between states, which to me makes logical sense. I represent Lake Tahoe, and this could potentially cause them problems when they're in Nevada and then they drive into California to drop off an individual or vice versa. It starts to get into, if we don't have similar laws on the book, it creates them a management nightmare. So in that respect, that's what the amendment is trying to address compared to the original bill. With your indulgence, Chair Harris, it might be wiser to allow Piper Overstreet to talk a little bit about this matter before we get into questions. Or if you wish, Chair, of course, this is your committee. I can entertain questions now. It is up to you, Chair.
We'll go ahead and invite Ms. Overstreet to make any remarks that she'd like.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Greetings, Chair Harris and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Piper Overstreet. I'm with the Griffin Company, and I'm appearing on behalf of Uber Technologies, Inc. I'd also like to note that I do have Tabitha Chow from the Uber operations team on standby to help answer any technical questions that may come up. Well, I'll start by saying that we absolutely understand the intent of NRS 706A.170, and of course the corresponding regulation, which is to prevent extreme price variability during local emergency situations. When a major local emergency occurs, our teams proactively cap surge in the affected area. And for example, when the news broke about the active shooter on October 1, 2017, which is a day I'm sure none of us will ever forget, our local team immediately cap surge, waived costs for all rides on or around the Strip, and continued to offer free rides going to and from crisis-related locations. And since that time, we've proactively capped surge dozens of times. The goal of SB 279 is to crystallize the existing law and prevent an unintended consequence like the one that we're seeing riders and drivers experiencing right now. As our state is safely loosening restrictions and increasing access to the vaccines, we're seeing a dramatic increase in demand. This bill will allow TNCs to adjust supply to meet that demand so that visitors have the same safe, seamless, and enjoyable experience that they have become accustomed to. And I can tell you that currently, Las Vegas has the worst reliability in the country. We're hearing from frustrated drivers who are curious as to why they aren't seeing surge pricing with increased demand. We have also received multiple inbound communication from local jurisdictions and airport personnel, as Senator Settlemyre just alluded to. Lastly, we've seen reports of riders having to choose between unsafe options such as driving under the influence or accepting rides from strangers who aren't with any regulated transportation entity. There was a story about this on Fox 5 News, actually. And I'm testifying in support of this bill with your proposed amendment, as Senator Settlemyre just proposed. And I respectfully request that you consider passing SB 279. And I want to say thank you again to Senator Settlemyre for bringing this bill forward. And thank you to the committee for your time today. And with that, stand ready for any questions.
Okay, Senator Settlemyre, if it's okay, I'll open it up. If it's okay with you, I'll open it up to questions from the committee at this point. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Senator Pickard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Didn't want to disappoint. And this has to do with the amendment itself. It's the change to sub 6. Rather than the authority may adopt regulations, it actually sets forth the what the limitation is. That's a little unusual in that we normally try to allow in this case the authority to adopt or possibly alter or fine-tune regulations on a more frequent basis than every other year as we do in the legislature. Why did we choose to put this in legislation instead of leave it up to the authority?
Senator Pickard, this is Senator Settlemyre. I'll take a first stab at that. The way I looked at it potentially is, or not potentially, as of yet, the authority has not adopted any regulations on this matter. And to me, it's imperative that we allow these individuals to get back to work. We allow our constituents and the visitors that are in the state the opportunity to utilize the TNCs, and especially out in the more rural aspects of the state of Nevada. It's more about giving people an option of how to travel. Whereas in your region, a lot more times, it's more about people that are traveling to our state for the experience, and they're used to the transportation network experience, and they're not being able, well, they're having a really bad one, as you just found out, being the worst in the nation. That is my explanation for that. Ms. Overstreet, if you could add on to that, I'd be appreciative. If allowed, Chair. Sorry.
Chair Harris, through you to Senator Pickard. Yes, that's correct.
You can go directly, Ms. Overstreet.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you. Senator Pickard, yes, that's correct. And again, this is about consistency. And I think that what we're seeing, especially because of the timing, and we have the opportunity to do this as we're seeing traffic pick up, this would be the best route to not only create consistency, but as to your point, not have to come back in the future and readdress what's an existing law.
All right, thank you. To me, this was unusual, but yeah, if the authority hasn't developed the regulations yet, then we got to start somewhere. So, okay, that makes sense. Thank you very much.
Vice Chair Brooks.
Thank you, Chair Harris. This question might be for Ms. Overstreet, if possible. When we talk about having some sort of uniformity across the states, is this pricing scenario under during an emergency and this language right here for duration and things like that, is this exactly the same as we'd see in some of our neighboring states?
So I know that there's similar language in Pennsylvania, DC, New York, and neighboring states. There's different states handle it differently, but the goal here is, and I forgot to add this. So, and this may get well beyond my liberal arts understanding, so I may have the tech person jump in here if I mess this up. But because of the way that the software itself works, and you take into account time, distance, variability, that it allows for the system to work and make sure it's in compliance. So that's why it's written the way it's written, if that makes sense.
It does, which would lead me to believe other states have something similar, if not exactly the same.
Yes, correct.
Senator Brooks, Vice Chair Brooks, this is Senator Settlemeyer. The explanation I also received is that with the concept of the original bill, even if it passed, they would not be able to implement it because of the inconsistency within the app, within the platform, and that would be very problematic. So I wanted to try to do something that actually would have an effect, and that's where the amendment came about. If the technical person is here from Uber, they may be able to have a much better explanation that might be simpler to understand than my ramblings.
Ms. Chow, go ahead, but please state your name for the record as you answer the question.
Thank you, Chair Harris. My name is Tabitha Chow, for the record, and I am with Uber Technologies. I'm on our operations team, and everything that's been stated thus far is accurate. And maybe to delve a little bit deeper into how surge works, the high-level overview, it's really just to balance supply and demand, but the pricing is actually decoupled between riders and drivers. So I believe the way it was previously drafted, it stated that anything additional that riders paid would need to go directly to drivers. And the way that our surge works is there's not a one-for-one necessarily. So it's not necessarily what exactly the rider pays goes directly to drivers. This is a system that has been in place for a few years now and is actually something based on driver preference and feedback. It allows drivers to have a more reliable view of surge. So if they drive into an area that has been deemed busy and is surging, they are guaranteed to get that surge amount. Even if the market rebalances and a rider doesn't pay surge, they're still guaranteed that amount. So just the way our system works on the back end, the intent is the same, I believe, in the two versions. However, this would allow us to technically comply as written.
Thank you so much for that answer. Vice Chair Brooks, go ahead, please.
Thank you. And so when we talk about it conforming with the algorithm and the methodology that you use in your app for pricing, what about other TNC companies? What does this do to or for other TNC companies? And Senator Settlemyer, you'll probably need to speak to that.
Yeah, so this is Senator Settlemyer. Thank you for the question, Vice Chair Brooks. I have reached out to Lyft. Obviously, I've had a fair amount of connections throughout the years on this particular subject. And sadly, due to the economic downturn caused by the pandemic, Lyft has chosen to cut its lobbying teams, and therefore they do not currently have representatives in any states in that matter. However, it's been expressed that they generally follow the other company, to say the least, in their platform, and that what is generally beneficial for the one is generally beneficial for them and likely for all, since most of them have decided to allow one particular entity to kind of take the lead in making sure, and then they tend to follow. I don't know if I'm being too vague there or too concise, to tell you the truth, Vice Chair Brooks.
Just the right amount of both. Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
All right, so I'll turn it over to my question now, if that's okay, if no other committee members have any questions. Senator Settlemyer, I guess my question is, if this is in response or the major issue is the emergency declaration, why are we not seeking to rescind that emergency declaration as it pertains to TNCs as opposed to putting into place legislation?
In that respect, if you'd like to have a discussion of rescission of 414 powers, I have a great proclamation I offered in a previous session, but since it didn't necessarily gain majority approval, let's say, I kind of doubted that that was really a feasible option. This seemed to be the least argumentative way to try to effectuate a change that could help my constituencies and the state of Nevada. So to me, that was the most logical way. And since the agency has not stepped forward with any solutions at this point in time, yet I've had several friends, unfortunately, get DUIs, and some of them did call or look for alternative travel through the utilizations of the app, but they weren't available. I felt it was necessary to try to bring something forward to do just that. And then upon learning that in your neck of the woods, 45-minute average wait time at the airport, I found to be unacceptable, especially in the next generation of individuals. It is customary as they travel to utilize the TNC experience. They find it to be desirous, and therefore that's what they look to in the state of Nevada. And we were doing a fantastic job. And then also, when we brought this legislation around originally, I reluctantly, as I'm sure you're shocked to hear, agreed to stick a rather hefty excise tax on this so that the state of Nevada could earn a fair amount of resources off it. Well, those have downturned. So why not do something that puts more money in a person's pocket, provides the rider the opportunity to get a ride if they so see fit? Again, there's no forcing them to have to get a ride at the TNC at a rate that's higher than normal. However, at the same time, we'll be able to put some more money potentially back into the state coffers. So to me, I looked at it on that aspect, and that's why I came forward.
All right, any additional questions before we turn it over to testimony? All right, seeing none, BPS, if you could please open up the line for testimony in support of Senate Bill 279.
Thank you, Chair. Callers, if you'd like to testify in support of Senate Bill 279, please press star 9 now to enter the queue. Once again, if you would like to testify in support of Senate Bill 279, please press star 9 now to enter the queue. Chair, at this time, no callers are indicating that they want to testify in support of the bill.
Okay, we will then open it up for testimony in opposition to Senate Bill 279.
Certainly, Chair. Callers, if you wish to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 279, please press *9 now to enter the queue. Once again, *9 now to testify in opposition to the bill. Chair, at this time, no callers indicated that they wish to testify in opposition to the bill.
Okay, let's see if there's anyone who'd like to testify in the neutral position, please.
Thank you, Chair. Callers, if you wish to testify in a neutral position for Senate Bill 279, please press *9 now to enter the queue. Once again, if you'd like to testify in a neutral position for Senate Bill 279, please press *9 now. Chair, at this time, no callers indicated that they wish to testify in a neutral position for Senate Bill 279.
Okay, Senator Settlemeyer, I'll kick it back to you for any closing comments if you'd like.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Chair, Chair Harris, and the Committee on Growth and Infrastructure. I'll be honest, I'm just shaking my head in shock and awe after, in 2015, spending beyond hours, beyond days, beyond weeks, beyond, well, months and years, all the way up to about day 110 on all the discussion on TNCs, and to have no one call and support opposition or neutral, I am, well, completely, absolutely besides myself. With that, I urge you to think favorably upon this bill in order to help out the citizens of the state of Nevada, our visitors to our great state, and of course, the bottom line in the Nevada coffers. So thank you, Chair, for your time and indulgence today.
All right, thanks for joining us. With that, I'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Senate Bill 279, and I'll turn it over to our Vice Chair, Senator Brooks, for the hearing on Senate Bill 288, as I will be presenting that bill.
Thank you, Chair Harris. I will open up the hearing on Senate Bill 288, and I look forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Brooks. Good afternoon, and good afternoon to the members of the Senate Growth and Infrastructure Committee. I am Senator Dallas Harris, representing Senate District 11, and I'm pleased to present Senate Bill 288 today. It's becoming an increasingly prominent model for autonomous vehicle services to be bifurcated, allowing the technology provider to be the supplier of the vehicle, equipment, and safety personnel, while the partnering rideshare company holds the Transportation Network Company, or TNC, license and is responsible for compliance and customer interaction. This model provides for optimum safety and innovation while ensuring that all statutory and regulatory obligations still rest with the licensee. Currently, autonomous vehicles are deployed in Clark County. These vehicles, although they have many of the capabilities of vehicles that will be licensed under Chapter 704B, the Transportation Service remains licensed under 706A because the technology and regulations require a safety driver to be present. Senate Bill 288, as amended, ensures that while fully autonomous vehicle services are required to staff vehicles with a vehicle operator or safety engineer, these employees are able to be paid by the technology provider. The bill also applies certain safety reporting and operational requirements of NRS 706B to be applied to autonomous taxis that are operating under 706A to build the bridge between chapters during this critical period of development. With me today is Sam Lemke and Abe Gabra from Motional, and I'm sorry if I butchered those names. As you may remember from their presentation earlier this session, Motional is the technology partner for Nevada's autonomous vehicle services offered by Lyft and Via. I also have Matt Walker from Greenberg-Traurig, who will walk through a section by section of the bill and will be available to questions. So at this time, I'll turn it over to the team at Motional.
Thank you, Chair Harris. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Brooks and members of the Senate Growth and Infrastructure Committee. We thank you for the opportunity to discuss Senate Bill 288. I am Abe Gabra, the Vice President of Global Operations at Motional. I also oversee the 250 employees at our Las Vegas Technical Center. Before we talk about the bill's specifics, I think it would be helpful to provide a brief overview of who Motional is and the role of the vehicle operator. My colleague, Sam Wempe, will then discuss the policy challenge, and our advisor, Matt Walker, will walk through the section by section. Motional has been fortunate to achieve several key company milestones and indeed key industry achievements right here in Nevada. Our history in the state began in 2018 with our Las Vegas Technical Center grand opening and followed later that year with a public autonomous vehicle pilot with Lyft in Las Vegas. The pilot is the world's longest running public AV service. Last year, we announced having provided over 100,000 rides on this pilot, and it's led to critical insights into the consumer experience and helped build operational knowledge across fleet operations, infrastructure, and utilization. Safety is our number one priority, and our vehicle operators are Motional employees that undergo weeks of training on how to oversee an autonomous vehicle, in addition to defensive driving courses and regular refreshers and skills assessments. After each software release, they must understand the nuances of how the vehicle is expected to operate, and because of how involved vehicle operators are with the platform, these individuals need to be Motional employees, even when monitoring autonomous vehicles on our partner networks. We're very proud of what we've built here in Nevada, and when it is safe to do so, we would be honored to show you our facilities and our fleet and testing operations. I will now turn it over to Sam Wempe to discuss the policy at hand regarding our vehicle operators.
Thanks, Abe. Good afternoon, Chair Harris. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Brooks, and members of the Senate Growth and Infrastructure Committee. I'm Sam Wempe, Director of Government Relations at Motional. We have been extremely fortunate to have had a great relationship with our government partners at all levels, from the City of Las Vegas and Henderson to Clark County and the RTC. We are honored by the opportunity to discuss the future of transportation with this committee today. Because we have the biggest footprint of any AV company in Nevada, we're at the cutting edge of experiencing how the legislative and regulatory regime in Nevada applies to AVs on a day-to-day basis. As Abe explained, our vehicle operators must remain employees even as they monitor vehicles used in commercial pilots. The type of challenges we're discussing, the payment of vehicle monitors and vehicle operators of an autonomous vehicle, is not one anyone really anticipated when the rules were developed. It was assumed that there would be a step change. Once the technology was ready, everything would be fully autonomous. Instead, it is a much more of a gradual transition, and it may require vehicle monitors in some situations for years to come, even as more fully autonomous vehicles are deployed in certain situations. The proposal we are discussing today resolves some of the challenges and helps Nevada continue to be a leader in the future of transportation technology. I'll now turn it over to our advisor, Matthew Walker, who will step through the section by section.
Thank you, Sam. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Brooks and committee members. My name is Matt Walker, for the record. I'm pleased to be with you on behalf of Motional this afternoon to walk briefly through a section by section of Senate Bill 288 as amended. Section 2 defines an monitored autonomous vehicle. This differentiates autonomous vehicle service where a vehicle operator or a safety engineer is present from a fully autonomous vehicle service that would fall under Nevada Revised Statute 706B. Section 3 defines an autonomous vehicle provider. Motional would fall under this definition of an autonomous vehicle provider as they own the technology of an autonomous taxi service and hire the safety engineer who provides the in-person monitoring of the vehicle. Section 4 defines safety engineer. This is the person behind the wheel of an autonomous taxi, and this definition helps build the bridge between the current definition of driver in 706A and the driverless environment of 706B. Section 5 allows TNCs to enter into partnerships with an autonomous vehicle provider. This construct is important because it retains the existing regulatory oversight for the TNC while allowing for the best practice model of the technology provider providing the technology and the safety engineer. Section 5, subsection 2, allows for the safety engineer to be employed by the autonomous vehicle provider. The current regulatory structure and statutory construct does not allow anyone other than the TNC to pay drivers. Section 5 makes it clear that safety engineers being paid by the monitored autonomous vehicle provider is not a violation of existing statutes or regulations of the Nevada Transportation Authority. Section 6 ensures that the existing regulatory structure for anyone providing a vehicle to a TNC under 706A is not bypassed by the arrangement under Section 5 of the bill. There should be no loophole in 706A regarding vehicle safety or oversight, and Section 5 clears up any potential conflict in that regard. Section 7 builds another bridge between NRS chapters 706A and 706B. Under 706A 200, a TNC must provide the license plate and photo of the driver to the customer. Under 706B, only the plate number is required. Section 7 makes it clear that in an autonomous taxi service provided by a TNC, the customer only needs to be provided with the photograph of the license plate and not the driver as well. Section 8 ensures that the autonomous taxi service still operating under 706A provides the safety report required by 706B 260 or 706A 270 to the Nevada Transportation Authority. While this may be duplicative of existing requirements, it is important that as the service transitions between chapters, there's no gap in safety reporting. Motional is definitely in the safety business as much as they are in the technology business, and they're committed to regulatory access and to key safety information. Subsection 3 of Subsection 8 requires the NTA to report to the Legislative Commission the data reported under this section and a finding of whether the existing statutory and regulatory insurance requirements are sufficient. We think that this will be helpful in giving clear sightlines for members of this committee into the safety environment in a rapidly evolving area, striking the balance between a more nimble regulatory environment and authority for agencies with the expertise while maintaining oversight of key safety policies in the state from leaders such as yourselves. Section 9 clarifies that an autonomous vehicle service may be restricted to certain areas or restricted to remain under certain speed limits or otherwise deployed in a manner to facilitate multiple passenger pickups along a fixed route. This language makes it clear that these practices are not long hauling as long as the passenger is aware they are conveyed to their intended destination. Section 10 clarifies when an autonomous taxi service is provided by a TNC through a partnership, that the autonomous vehicle provider, the TNC, is still subject to the insurance requirements with any other deployment under 706A and 706B. So again, to be clear, nothing in this bill would interfere with any of the existing limits and statute in terms of what insurance coverage is required by a TNC. Sections 12 through 23 make corresponding changes. And then lastly, Section 24 of the amendment proposes to change the effective date to upon passage and approval. Before I conclude, I would like to thank Asher Killian with the Legislative Counsel Bureau. We worked with Senator Harris on a much narrower change to NRS 706A, and his experience with these chapters led to a much more robust and stronger draft. We really appreciate his time and expertise in the development of this bill. And with that, I'll conclude and we stand ready for questions. Thank you.
And Vice Chair Brooks, I'll also note we have representatives from the NTA on the line as well if members have questions that might be better suited for them.
Thank you, Chair Harris. Do any of the members have questions for Senator Harris or the motional team or Mr. Walker or the NTA? Senator Pickard, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I just have a few questions just from a practical standpoint. I noticed in my first review of the bill, and I didn't have the benefit of the amendment when I reviewed it. And so if it's changed there, I apologize. But I know TNCs and taxis both provide both photos of the driver and the license plate for a safety matter. Why would we not ask Motional to do the same thing?
Sure, Senator Pickard. Matt Walker on behalf of Motional, thank you for the question. And Vice Chair Brooks, if it's okay if I go direct,
Please,
I'll do
everyone
so.
go direct. Yes.
Thank you. So great question, Senator. The construct under 706B anticipates that only the license plate number be provided and not the driver, because obviously there wouldn't be one. I do want to say that before I ask Sam Wimpy to augment the answer with anything I may have missed, that 706B 190 and 706B 320 also require various autonomous vehicle identifiers that are also clearly identifiable from the exterior of the vehicle. So we think that there still are multiple ways for both drivers and passengers to understand what's going on the road, and that they are in fact seeing the same vehicle that they're being matched with. But maybe Sam could add something from an operational perspective on that as well.
Thank you, Matt. Sam Wimpy, for the record. Thank you very much. Yeah, there's a couple of reasons for doing this. I mean, one is just to start to get passengers, comfortable. These are autonomous vehicles, and making sure that they are aware that this is an autonomous vehicle when it is showing up, and that is one of the important elements of this. I'll also turn it over to Abe, who is overseeing all the operations in our technical facility and can answer some further detailed questions.
Thanks, Sam. This is Abe Gabra. Yeah, I would just add to that all of our vehicles are clearly identified and branded. So not only is the Motional and Lyft are the Motional and Lyft brands prominently displayed, but we also have the special Nevada red license plate for autonomous vehicles, and we have self-driving vehicle identifiers on the vehicles themselves.
Sure. My thought is more from a customer service side. People want to know who they're getting in the car with, and we've got somebody in the car with them. And that's always been, at least as has been explained to me, a part of the safety factor for the consumer to know who they're getting in the car with. And this leads directly to my next question, if I may, which is I may have missed, Mr. Walker, what you had to say, but is the safety engineer a driver or not?
Thank you, Senator Pickard, for the additional question. Matt Walker, for the record, on behalf of Motional. The safety engineer is, I think what you're pointing to is the dynamic that there's definitely a bridge between the driver in the traditional sense of 706A and what this safety engineer represents. So I'd like for Sam to add to kind of the functional element that the safety engineer provides, but also maybe why they're present in the vehicle in the first place. I think that might be helpful for the committee.
Thank you, Matthew. Sam Wimpy, for the record. So as Matthew mentioned, the test engineer serves a number of roles in the vehicle. There are, first and foremost, safety is making sure that absolutely that everyone on the roadway is experiencing the safety that an autonomous vehicle can provide. So they're going to be monitoring everything the vehicle does. They also, as Abe mentioned earlier, they understand with all the software updates, the intricacies of the vehicle's performance and behavior. And so if there are certain situations where the vehicle may not be able to perform, they're going to proactively take over and make sure that the vehicle is always going to be operating in a safe state. Abe, is there anything else that you would like to add?
This is Abe Gabra. Yeah, Sam, I think you've got it all. I mean, as we mentioned previously, safety is our top priority, and we train our vehicle operators, our safety engineers, to always have that top of mind. And every software release, we're testing new features, and the vehicles are becoming more human-like in how they operate. And we've seen that with our initial platforms that we deployed a few years ago, and we're deploying new platforms now that are operating without a driver in some cases on Nevada public roads. So as we continue to advance this technology, it's more important. It's becoming more and more important to make sure that we have employees in the car that are completely trained and equipped to anticipate the vehicle's behavior and ensure everybody's safety in and around the vehicle.
Right, thank you for that. I mean, I don't know that it's comforting to think that these cars are going to be human-like I have a couple of kids who scare me to death regularly. I'm not sure I want an autonomous vehicle doing the same thing. But this leads to my last question. And the reason I ask about the driver is that there's an entire body of law when it comes to the accidents and crashes that we see. And I'm looking specifically at Section 8, Sub 3, where it's the drivers that is responsible for the operation of the vehicle. And I want to make sure it's clear on the record whether or not we are calling this safety operator. I'm sure we've chosen that language deliberately instead of a driver, because number one, they're not expected to drive except for when they have to take over, then they're driving the vehicle. We need to make sure we're clear on that, because when we have a crash under Sub 3, the driver's identity is not to be disclosed to anyone other than the authority. And so this becomes a litigation problem. I assume that this would be discoverable information, but what happens when the police show up and they're taking the details? Well, there's not discovery where someone's issuing a subpoena or an interrogatory asking to identify who was behind the wheel. How do we resolve this? Is there an exception to this exception?
And Mr. Gabra and Mr. Walker, I think I can kind of distill Senator Pickett's question down a little bit. If you guys could just hit on the liability provisions, maybe what you do in an instance where there's an accident.
Madam Chair, respectfully, we need to determine whether or not these guys are drivers.
Well, Senator Pickett, it seems from your question you're concerned about being able to hold someone liable for the accident, and so whether that, I understand you're tying that to definition of a driver, but I want Mr. Walker, Mr. Gabra to give you a little bit of an explanation about who would be held liable and maybe how that works, and I
Sure.
think that might allay your concerns. Thanks.
Sure, thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Senator Pickett, for the question. Again, Matt Walker for the record on behalf of Emotional. I'm going to touch on a few things about the function of defining something other than a driver, and then I'll let Mr. Gabra speak to the liability questions and concerns from Senator Pickett. But essentially, there's something other than a driver because we want to ensure that the technology provider can employ that safety engineer. It's best practice to have that safety engineer employed by and trained by and overseen by the technology provider, and that's what we hope to accomplish by defining it as something other than a driver. Also, unlike a driver under the 706 and 706A construct, this person isn't receiving different compensation based on ride length. They're not receiving tips. They really are there for the management of the technology and the safety intervention in the case that such is needed. So, Mr. Gabra, could you please address the questions about liability and how that typically functions within your TNC service, again, that's already functioning here in Southern Nevada?
Sam, do you want to weigh in, or you want me to go ahead?
You go ahead and I'll follow.
So, sure, this is Abe Gabra again. So far, as we've been operating in Nevada for a few years, whenever there's an incident, and sometimes we involve law enforcement, and we have close cooperation with both Nevada Highway Patrol and Las Vegas Metro Police. Depending on the severity of the incident, we usually give them a call either way and kind of give them the option to show up on the scene if they have the time. Sometimes if it's really minor, they elect not to, and we just exchange information with the other vehicle. But ultimately, these are Motional owned and operated vehicles, and we are responsible regardless of which employee is in the car at that time. And that's how we've approached all of our operations in the state to date.
Yeah, and I will just add, thanks, Abe. This is Sam Wempy for the record, that some of the existing statutes already cover the definition of driver when it comes to a fully autonomous vehicle, which I think is where this gets into more of the fundamental nature of some of your questions. For the, in the situations that we're talking about here, there is still a driver on board. So I think we don't necessarily need to address some of those in this particular situation.
All right, and I appreciate that. And I just it's clear because it's the weird spot where that question is going to become important, where maybe the driver did something really wacky. I'm sorry, the safety operator took control under an emergency and did something that made no sense at all. And now, the company is in a position where that's an ultra vires act. They went beyond their training. They didn't follow their training. We're not responsible. I could see this being a litigation nightmare. So if we can be solid, and you just answered the question, they are, for that instance, considered a driver. Now they're all looped in. Nobody's getting out of liability, and the victim of the crash is going to be made whole. So thank you. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Vice Chair. I appreciate the opportunity.
Senator Hammond, do you have a question?
I did, but I think I just got answered because I was looking at that term again, that safety engineer, and the only time I can see that it is actually in statute is in NRS 625.520, and I don't think that is what you had in mind when you are looking at what a safety engineer is. Am I correct in assuming that it has nothing to do with that particular NRS?
Matt Walker for the record on behalf of Motional. Yes, this would be a new construct that's intended to remain in the confines of this chapter. Thank you for the question.
Not a problem. That's what I thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do any of the other committee members have a question, any questions or comments for Senator Harris or her team? It looks as if we do not. Senator Harris. So with that, I will go to the phones and see if we have anyone on the phone in support of Senate Bill 288.
Thank you, Vice Chair Brooks. Callers, if you'd like to testify in support of Senate Bill 288, please press star 9 now to enter the queue. Once again, please press star 9 now to enter the queue for support of Senate Bill 288. Once again, if you'd like to testify in support of Senate Bill 288, please press star 9 now to enter the queue. Vice Chair Brooks, at this time, no callers have indicated that they wish to testify in support of Senate Bill 288.
Can we please see if we have anyone on the line in opposition of Senate Bill 288?
Certainly, callers, if you'd like to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 288, please press star 9 now to enter the queue. Once again, if you'd like to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 288, please press star 9 now. Vice Chair Brooks, at this time, no callers are wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 288.
And finally, can we see if there's anyone on the line who would like to offer testimony in the neutral position on Senate Bill 288?
Thank you, Vice Chair Brooks. Callers, if you'd like to testify in a neutral position on Senate Bill 288, please press star 9 now to enter the queue. Once again, if you'd like to testify in a neutral position for Senate Bill 288, please press star 9 now. All right, Vice Chair Brooks, it appears that no callers are wishing to testify in neutral either.
Thank you. So it doesn't seem like we have anyone on the line to make any comments on Senate Bill 288. So with that, would you have any final comments that you would like to make, Senator Harris, on this bill?
Sure. I'll just close by saying I think we can all see it makes a bit more sense for the person in the car, the safety engineer, to be paid by and be an employee of the autonomous vehicle company as opposed to the T&C that the autonomous vehicle company has paired with. And we just need to make a couple of changes to make that happen. I think we can do that without risking safety or any licensing concerns, while also just making this make a little bit more sense so we can kind of proliferate these type of agreements, which I think we're all on board for. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Harris. And with that, we'll bring the hearing on Senate Bill 288 to a close. And Chair Harris, since you're already up, do you want to just take the agenda out of order and hear Senate Bill 387?
I promised the senators we'd go in numerical order, although that does make sense. So we'll do this dance one more time, Vice Chair Brooks, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much. I'll go ahead and open up the hearing for Senate Bill 328, which revises provisions relating to energy storage systems. And I'll welcome our colleague, Senator Lang. Go ahead and begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Harris, members of the committee. I am Roberta Lang, representing Senate District 7 in Clark County. Thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 328, a bill addressing targets for energy storage. I am pleased to be joined by Ernie Adler from Silver State Government Relations, Hunter Stern from IBEW 1245, who will speak about the contractor licensing provisions in the bill, and Bob Johnson, who is a political advisor on energy. As you may recall, Senate Bill 204 in the 2017 session directed the Public Utilities Commission to do a cost-benefit analysis on targets for energy storage capacity and to set biennial targets if the benefits outweighed the costs. The analysis resulted in the PUCN setting biennial targets that started with a 100 megawatt target for 2020 and increased to 1,000 megawatts in 2030. Since we enacted Senate Bill 204 in 2017, energy storage is increasingly recognized as a critical component of efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to facilitate the nation's migration to renewable energy. According to the National Conference of State Legislators, over the past 2 years, it has tracked over 260 bills related to energy storage, up from only 88 bills between 2017 and 2018. Along with Nevada, 6 other states have set 2030 energy storage targets or goals, generally ranging from 1,000 megawatts to 3,000 megawatts. Before I walk through the bill, I want to discuss the proposed amendment posted on Nellis. The proposed amendment would remove the specific targets in Section 3, Subsection 1, and substitute a requirement that the Public Utilities Commission use the 2021 Integrated Resource Plan, or IRP, to reassess the targets and establish new ones. Under the proposed amendment, the Public Utilities Commission will report back to the Legislative Commission by January 1, 2022, or when new targets are established, whichever is sooner. Returning now to the original bill, you will see that subsection 3 of section 3 sets forth the process the Public Utilities Commission to grant a waiver or a deferral of a target based on a cost-benefit analysis, which looks at 10 factors listed on the top of page 9. These factors are the same ones used in Senate Bill 204 in 2017. Section 5, which Hunter Stern will addresses the installation of energy storage systems and ensures that a contractor doing such work has the necessary qualifications. Section 6 and 7 incorporate these qualifications into Chapter 624 of the NRS, which regulates contractors through the state's Contractors Board. Going back to Section 1, it simply requires an electrical utility to include a plan for energy storage procurement as part of its triennial integrated resource plan. The remaining sections of the bill will be further amended as needed to be consistent with the proposed amendment to subsection 1 of Section 3. Chair Harris, this concludes my presentation. I believe the bill with the proposed amendment is an important step to improving our state's energy storage capacity and will complement our efforts to fight climate change and provide stability in the provision of electricity for our citizens. I would like to now turn it over to Hunter Stern with IBEW 1245, who will discuss Section 5, the qualifications. I will also point out to the committee, we have received a lot of interest in this section. We are working with a lot of groups on proposals. We've received a proposed amendment. We haven't settled on anything yet, but I felt it was really important to get on the record what this bill, what Section 5 in this bill is really trying to say. So Hunter.
Thank you, Senator. Good afternoon, Chair Harris, Vice Chair Brooks, and members of the committee. My name is Hunter Stern. I'm an Assistant Business Manager of IBEW Local Union 1245. Our members work for NV Energy and contractors doing line work, as well as tree trimmers that do line clearance tree trimming in northern and central Nevada. And so, as Senator Lang mentioned, the Section 5 specifies a couple of requirements for people performing this work. The first requirement is around the specialty or knowledge of electrical contractors. These are C2 contractors in Nevada, as well as specifically completing a certification program known as the ESEMTAC, or Energy Storage and Microgrid Training and Certification Program. This is a national program that was developed by, or at, and mostly by Penn State University, along with other specific interests, including firefighters, as well as the EEIC and other utility and individual energy contractors throughout the country. It's a national standard. It's relatively new, but we are fortunate that the largest number of people who have gone through this program actually did so in Las Vegas through the training center run by IBEW 357. This is a training program that is non-branded, non-specific, and any qualified electrician and qualified electrical contractor in any state can apply for and receive this training as it's set up today. As in addition, some of the reasons, there's a number of reasons. Obviously, you want to get any electrical equipment installed and operating properly and correctly, because 90% of energy storage systems rely on lithium-ion batteries. At least 90% of those that are installed today. There are some real advantages to lithium-ion batteries, such as they're high efficient. They're relatively efficient. They're high in energy density, meaning that they can receive and hold a large amount of electricity compared to other battery systems and other energy storage systems generally. And they can also disperse this electricity relatively efficiently. However, there's also some negative effects or negative aspects to lithium-ion, particularly is that they run hot. And if there is any kind of thermal runaway or combustion, which means fire, once that battery begins to discharge its energy, you can't put out any kind of fires. And so there's been concerns, and I've actually heard from firefighters on this issue as well. And the best way that we know how to ensure safety and certainty in the equipment is to have the right people trained in the right way to install and maintain it. And with that, that is a brief outline. And if there's obviously any questions for either myself or the senator, we'd be happy to answer them. And I see one.
Oh, we're going to put that on hold, please, Madam Chair. I have one more speaker. Thank you, Hunter. Now I'd like to have Bob Johnson speak with you a little bit. He's our policy advisor on energy issues. I would like him to talk about the PUC, the targets, and kind of the bigger picture. Bob.
Good afternoon, Chair Harris, Vice Chair Brooks, members of the committee. My name is Bob Johnson. I'm a policy advisor to the Nevada Senate Democratic Caucus. And I would just say that as Senator Lang has summarized, I can elaborate on that a little bit. SB 204 provided for a two-step process, really, where first the commission had to determine whether it was in the public interest to set biennial storage procurement targets. And then they had to go to rulemaking. If they determined it was in the public interest, and they did, they had to go to rulemaking to set those biennial targets. And that regulation became effective June 8th of 2020. So it was a significant lapse of time from the passage of SB 204 and the effective date of the regulation. And in the interim, the cost of battery energy storage systems, and particularly lithium-ion battery energy storage systems, has plummeted. The Energy Information Administration a report that came out last year that said that the costs had come down 70% from 2015 to 2018. And then I was looking recently at an NREL forecast that they're predicting another 67, 70% decline from where we are now through 2030. And so the other events that have happened since 2017 of relevance to this discussion, NV Energy has brought to the commission 9 different projects that are solar, utility scale solar projects with associated energy storage. And 8 of those are purchase power agreements. 1 is a utility owned project. None of them are online yet, but the first 3 are projected to be online in commercial operation by this year, which would bring 100 megawatts of energy storage. And then by the end of 23, there will, if all these projects stay on schedule, there will be 1,028 megawatts of energy storage online on NV Energy system. So the 2030 target of 1,000 megawatts needs to be revisited in light of circumstances and events that have happened, and primarily the plummeting cost of energy storage systems or battery energy storage systems, and then their need on NV Energy system as you add more and more solar, intermittent solar resources to the energy mix. Those events really call out for revisiting the storage targets as is provided in this bill and the conceptual amendment. And with that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Senator Lang, does that conclude your presentation?
Thank you, Senator Harris or Chair Harris. That concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, Senator Pickard, fire away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions. With respect to the targets set in Section 3, are there other states that have set hard target? I mean, we just put these regulations in place with their targets, and now we're putting them in statute instead of in regulation, which means we don't change them until every 2 years, assuming we can get a majority to vote for it. How many states have put these kind of targets in their statutes instead of regulation?
Bob, can you speak to that?
Unfortunately, Senator, I cannot. It's information I could certainly look to and see. But as I understand it, just to clarify, as I understand the conceptual amendment, we removed the specific targets from this bill. And so those would be revisited by the commission and reported back to the legislature as compared to be put in statute. But I can certainly run down that information if it's the desire of the committee.
All right, I appreciate that. And I had missed that provision of the conceptual amendment.
Senator Pickard?
Yes.
So I think that the reason we had the conceptual amendment is because we didn't want to be prescriptive. We knew that Embry Energy was exceeding their goals and they had new projects. And that when we found out that there was going to be a new IRP, we felt that it was important that we look at that IRP and create the goals out of that.
Sure, and I agree with that line of thinking. So I appreciate that. And then my second question had to do with Section 5, particularly where it says a person shall not install an energy storage system in the state unless they hold a valid license and the certificate of training. And then what about, so that's going to preclude the do-it-yourselfer, and I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing. But does this require anything more than what the current residential contractors, the C2F contractors are able to do? Would this require additional licensure or training for them? How does this provision work?
Sure, Senator Pickard, let me just take a stab at it first, and then I'm going to ask Hunter to talk about the specific training. I think that's what's most important to us when we created this bill is that there is a certain degree of safety, both for the public and for if there were a fire, for the firefighters are going to come and fight that fire. And so that's why we have that language in there. And then I'll have Hunter speak a little bit about the specifics of the licensure.
Yes, thank you, Senator. Hunter Stern, for the record, Hunter Stern, IBW Local 1245. And yes, Senator Pickard, that is specifically the additional certification or training is that eSAMTAC program. So that a C2 licensed contractor with a certification of completion of the eSAMTAC program would be fully qualified to install and maintain those energy storage systems.
All right, thank you. And what does that training cost the contractor?
Well, the training, the cost, I'm not 100% sure, although I'm quite sure that there's one or two people on the line who might be able to answer the question, some of my brothers and also contractors who've gone through the training. The training itself is 4 weeks, 2 days a week. So it's more than just a day or a refresher, but it's less than a full-fledged, months-long class.
All right, I appreciate that. And I don't want to belabor the point. I'm a little sensitive, having been a residential contractor almost as long as I was a commercial contractor. They're very different business models. And what works for particularly the union contractors versus the non-union residential contractors, it might be quite a burden for the residential. That said, we don't want to let anybody off the hook for safety. So just trying to understand where the boundaries are. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Vice Chair Brooks.
Thank you, Chair Harris. I have a question kind of along the lines of what Senator Pickard was asking. I believe the goals and the targets that we have in here, as well as the certification necessary, is as it pertains to the utility or utilities in their procurement plan or utility scale storage. Is that correct, Senator Lang?
Hunter, can you answer that question, please?
Yes, Hunter Stern, IBW Local 1245. So this, Senator, I might have missed part of your question. Apologies. The question was specifically about the number or amount of certification required. Could you please restate it? Sorry.
No problem at all. So this was along the lines of Senator Pickard's question. So it appears that the goals that are stated in this are for utility scale procurement by the utilities for energy storage. But it might appear as if, or at reading this in Chapter 624, the provisions in Chapter 624 that it wants to modify, that if you were installing energy storage, you'd have to be appropriately licensed and get the certification that's necessary, regardless of what type of storage, where that storage application was going to be. Am I interpreting that correctly?
I think it is yes, I think you are interpreting it as it's drafted. There's some difficulty in distinguishing with the technology whether or not the installer is adequately versed in the equipment to design and install the lithium-ion battery systems. So again, the safe approach is to ensure that everybody is qualified to do what's necessary, whether it's in a home or in a commercial sort of a smaller commercial building rather than utility scale. And I would point out, especially with those smaller residential, as Senator Pickard identified, the residential contractors, it's those kinds of customers who will have this equipment, either in their home or a garage or sitting near their meter, which actually poses a greater threat to their property than what is installed either at a large solar array or utility scale somewhere out away from the public and away from homes and people.
I appreciate that. I have a giant battery sitting in my garage, so I'm glad that I hired a properly licensed and trained contractor to install it. And in a conversation with the contractors board, they had mentioned, and I'm sorry, I'm just bringing this up now, Senator. They had mentioned that a valid license in the specialty of electrical contracting with any subclassification might be too narrow, and a valid license issued pursuant to this chapter might be appropriate. If you can imagine some of the larger scale, when we look at the energy definition of energy storage, some of these larger scales will need multiple disciplines and might need a general engineering license or something like that. So I'll submit that to you for your consideration for possible addition to your amendment. I apologize for just bringing it up right now, but I think it matches up with the definition of energy storage just a little bit better. But I appreciate this, Samtec. I've toured the facility. I've seen the training curriculum, and I've talked to many of the instructors, and I'm proud that we're training trainers all over the country right here in Southern Nevada, or here in Nevada. So I appreciate this additional safety measure for energy storage systems.
And Senator Brooks, we do have that proposed amendment from the contractors, so don't feel bad. We are working through that process. We just couldn't get it finished before committee. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I just wanted to put it on the record.
All right, Senator Hammond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When you were having a discussion earlier and you're talking about your goals, utility storage goals, and most of the conversation was centered around not residential but commercial. I was wondering if it really is purely a goal to store a certain amount of energy. Would not the residential then maybe be calculated? Can we use residential storage capacity to then achieve that goal? Or is that something, is there a reason why you wouldn't want to use the residential as well?
Thank you. Mr. Johnston, would you like to respond to that?
Thank you, Bob Johnston, Policy Advisor for the record. The SB 204 did include distributed storage or residential storage, and I don't believe there's anything in this bill that would exclude it, Senator Hammond. It's of a much smaller scale today, although nationally it is increasing rapidly because costs are also declining there. And because of events in Texas and in California, and we're closer to California, obviously, but there's a much greater concern about resilience. And so there's much greater interest in adding battery storage to a rooftop solar system for what's been termed critical needs, so that you can continue to have some electricity during a prolonged outage. But I don't believe there's anything in this bill that would exclude storage on the customer side of the meter, either residential or commercial customers. NV Energy does currently have incentive programs to provide incentives for that type of storage. And I was checking recently, I believe in 2020, they provided incentives for about 7,000 kilowatts of behind the meter customer storage. I don't know if that's indicative of the total amount of it in Nevada, but that was in 2020 for NV Energy. And so that's about 7 megawatts of capacity on the customer side of the meter. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the answer. So if I could follow up, it sounds like what you're saying is, yes, you could add residential in order to achieve the goal that's set forth. In order to do that, though, would, everything that was already in 204 earlier, would it allow those who do residential storage then to actually be licensed, or would they need to do any additional licensing in order to, is there any additional licensing or other additional burdens that residential contractors would have to do in order to be able to meet the needs that are set forth in this bill in order to store it properly?
Senator Hunter Stern, IBW Local 1245. Again, the additional training beyond the C2 contractor license would be that East SAMTAC training that we were discussing previously when I was responding to Senator Brooks's question. So it is a 4-week, 2-a-day certification for those contractors.
And again, you don't know offhand the cost that would be for somebody who's looking to be able to do that.
I'm checking madly with a couple of my colleagues.
Senator Hammond, we can find out and get it to the committee chair to get out to members of the committee.
Thank you so much, Senator, and thank you very much, Hunter, and appreciate Bob your comments. Thank you.
Do we have any additional questions from committee members before we go ahead and turn it over for testimony? Okay, seeing none, BPS, if you could please open up the lines for testimony in support of Senate Bill 328.
Certainly, Chair. Callers, if you'd like to testify in support of Senate Bill 328, please press star 9 now to enter the queue. Will the caller with the last 3 digits of 517 please slowly state and spell your name for the record? You may begin now.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Danny Thompson, D-A-N-N-Y, Thompson, T-H-O-M-P-S-O-N. I'm here today representing IBW Local 396. We just want to go on record in support of this bill. You know, having the properly trained individuals doing this type of work can't be understated when you're dealing with electricity in the public. And so just want to add our support to this bill. Thank you.
Will the next caller with the last three digits of 056 please slowly state and spell your name for the record. If you're having trouble unmuting yourself, you can press *6, and you may begin now.
Good afternoon, Chair Harris and members of the committee. My name is James Halsey, Jameshalsey, and I am the business manager of IBW Local 357. Today I speak on behalf of my 4,000 members in favor of SB 328, and specifically Section 5 regarding ESAMTAC. ESAMTAC stands for Energy Storage and Microgrid Training and Certification. ESAMTAC is a training program and credential that prepares electrical contractors and workers for the safe and effective assembly, testing, commissioning, maintenance, repair, retrofitting, and decommissioning of energy storage and microgrid systems. The ESAMTAC initiative, led by Penn State University, is a nonprofit, brand-neutral, national training and certification program based on standards and codes developed and or approved by the National Fire Protection Association, the National Electrical Installation Standards, National Electrical Code, and the American National Standards Institute. Our local apprenticeship training center has already held 2 train-the-trainer classes with a total of 50 individuals trained, and we have future ESAMTAC training classes scheduled. I heard mention questions about the cost, and we are looking at roughly about a $250 fee for a 16 modules, which is 4 weeks of 2 classes a week. The ESAMTAC training is fundamental to the safety of our customers and the installers of energy storage systems. This bill would also make Nevada a leader in energy storage. For this and the reasons previously mentioned, IBW Local 357 supports SB 328. Thank you.
Will the next caller with the last three digits of 689 please slowly state and spell your name for the record? You may begin now.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, Tom, T-O-M, last name Dunn, D-U-N-N, District Vice President of the Professional Firefighters of Nevada. We're here today in support of SB 328 and specifically addressing our comments to Section 5. In April of 2019, 4 firefighters were seriously hurt in a commercial energy storage system explosion in Arizona. Their injuries included burns, traumatic brain injury, internal bleeding, and broken bones. The professional firefighters of Nevada want to ensure that these facilities are constructed, maintained, and operated under the best possible standards such as NFPA and licensing such as ESAMTAC. Some of the contributing factors to this explosion specific to Arizona was that the fire and smoke detection systems did not include and were not required to include sensors that provided information about the presence of flammable gases. There were no means for the hazmat team to monitor toxic gas concentrations, the lower explosive level limit, or the conditions inside the energy storage system from a physically secure location. The energy storage system communication system failed before the hazmat team even arrived at the incident. Personnel who maintained the energy storage system and the fire department were unable to use the system to understand the conditions inside the installation. In conclusion, from our testimony today, we want to ensure that when we arrive on these scenes that we have the best possible information that we have. We want to make sure that they are constructed to the best possible standards and maintained through those standards and licensing such as ESAMTAC as well. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Dunn, if you haven't hopped off yet, Senator Pickard has a quick question. I think that's related specifically to the firefighter issue. Are you still with us?
Caller, this is Broadcast and Production Services. Please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm still here.
Great. Senator Pickard, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate the opportunity. Mr. Dunn, just a quick question because I would like to know a little bit more about the Arizona fire situation. That was that a utility size storage facility, or was that a small one for a business? Or I'm trying to figure out where the boundaries are for the large ones and the fire risk versus the small residential ones.
The one specific to Arizona was basically a small complex of, for a lack of better definition or explanation, Connex boxes or shipping containers that appear to have been retrofitted to include an energy storage system. And so we believe that this type of issue applies to large, whether it be large megawatt facilities or smaller commercial facilities that would, potentially power a block or a specific building type. I am personally not aware of any of these explosions that have happened on a residential facility here in the state of Nevada, and that's I'm not personally aware of any today that have happened in the state of Nevada.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
All right, thank you. BPS, if we could move on to the next caller, please. Thank you.
Certainly, Chair. Callers, if you've just joined us and you would like to give testimony in support of Senate Bill 328, please press star 9 now to enter the queue. Will the caller with the last 3 digits of 822 please slowly state and spell your name for the record? You may begin now.
Good afternoon, Chair Harris and members of the committee. My name is Matt Rubin, M-A-T-T-R-U-B-I-N. I am an energy policy analyst with Western Resource Advocates. WRA is a nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting the West's land, air, and water. WRA supports the efforts of Senate Bill 328 to continue to expand the build-out of battery energy storage in Nevada. Battery storage is an integral component in meeting Nevada's policy goal of zero or near zero greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2050, and an interim goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 28% by 2025 and 45% by 2050, both as compared to 2005 levels. This requires a shift in generation primarily to variable renewable technologies such as solar, which is abundant in Nevada. In order to meet daily peak demands of a decarbonized grid, Nevada will need significant battery capacity that can store energy when it's cheapest and most bountiful, energy is more expensive and in higher demand. In Nevada, that means charging batteries midday when there is excess solar energy production and discharging from 9 to 5 p.m. when demand is greatest. Batteries further displace the use of emissions-intensive gas peakers that would otherwise be called upon to meet peak demand. Lazard's most recent levelized cost of storage analysis already shows that batteries co-located with solar are less expensive than new gas peakers on a $1 per megawatt hour basis. For these reasons, WRA supports the passage of SB 328. Thank you.
Will the next caller with the last 3 digits of 536 please slowly state and spell your name for the record? You may begin now.
Hello, and thank you, Madam Chair and committee. It's Carl Keller, C-A-R-L-K-E-L-L-E-R. I'm a Northern Nevada resident. I've been in the electrical trade 54 years and still active. Been an electrical contractor for 36 of those years. I'm a trainer at the Electrical Training Center, and one of the subjects that I'm teaching is the SEM-TAC course. We have that course scheduled for training this next month, starting on the 5th of April. We have presently 15 members in attendance due to the fact that's all we can legally put in our classroom to maintain the COVID requirements. I am in support of this particular bill because battery storage is necessary to stabilize the utility grid due to the solar unreliability. And the unreliability is any cloudy day that we have, the solar energy starts to drop and the utility grid has to fill in that gap. Presently, the electrical contractors are required to carry a certificate if you're if you want to do fire alarm work. You're required to carry another certificate if you deal with electric car charging. You also need a certificate if you're dealing with solar energy. Tesla, as a matter of fact, I cannot, as an electrical contractor, install Tesla batteries in residential homes unless I go through Tesla's training program. So I know, as being an electrician for all these years, the electrical trade has not been trained in properly handling battery energy, because battery energy can release its energy in a flash. And due to that thermal runaway, arc flashing, it will release molten metal, flammable and toxic electrolytic gases. So without proper training, until I took the training in Las Vegas at the training center to become a trainer, I could not properly, as an experienced electrician, properly install battery storage systems. Thank you.
If there are any more callers who wish to give testimony in support of Senate Bill 328, please press star 9 now to enter the queue. Chair Harris, at this time, no other callers are wishing to give testimony in support of the bill.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to those who'd like to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 328.
Certainly, Chair. Callers, if you'd like to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 328, please press star 9 now to enter the queue. Once again, that is star 9 now to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 328. Once again, if you'd like to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 328, please press star 9 now. Chair, at this time, no callers are wishing to testify in opposition to the bill.
All right, let's see if there's anyone who'd like to testify in the neutral position.
Certainly, Chair. Callers, if you would like to testify in a neutral position for Senate Bill 328, please press star 9 now to enter the queue. All right, well, the first caller with the last 3 digits of 868, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You may begin now.
Hi there, Chair Harris and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jeff Morris, Jeffmorris. I'm the Senior Director of State Government Relations for Schneider Electric North America. SC is a global 500 company in the automation and energy management space. We have approximately 50 employees in Nevada, mainly in the building automation area, working with some of the largest buildings in Las Vegas. We are ranked the #1 sustainability corporation in the world. We are the largest builders of microgrids in North America, and you'll find our products in 50% of homes and buildings in the United States. I want to thank Senator Lang for bringing this issue and the underlying chapter of law for discussion before the Nevada Legislature. SC is neutral on the legislation before you today, but would like to work with the sponsor to improve on the ideas as they are presented. We currently do not have any proprietary high-voltage battery devices that are SC products in the U.S. market. We have some areas of concern on the bill as presented. The underlying storage policy is in need of a technology update or modernization. Specifically, we would recommend an outcome-based technology-neutral policy that focuses balancing on circuits and the top 200 hours of peak capacity for demand, peak capacity for hosting or ancillary services from the bottom up instead of the top down. The most economically efficient and decarbonized transaction is when supply and demand can meet at the closest proximity possible. If you happen to be in T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, we have a great kiosk display about automated buildings and how our digitized platforms with machine learning can optimize for each customer's values. We use air, water, and sometimes batteries to store and use energy. If we had a two-way communication platform, we could extend that optimization to work with the local distribution utility for the benefit of all ratepayers. Please keep the door open for customer and privately owned storage first to optimize customer investment before utility-built storage. Our customers who value resiliency or decarbonization as a primary value often build storage into their value chain, and not using the capital already deployed doesn't recognize the benefits of the dynamic load the technology provides today. The definition of storage in today's law, there's a strange juxtaposition, could mean anything from a desktop UPS uninterruptible power device to data center UPS, as well as thermal loads in buildings in our battery energy management systems for our customers, or behind utility meter connections. So the scope of the bill should be refined to mitigate unintended consequences. If it was really targeted at high voltage lithium batteries, it should just state that and not use the underlying definition of storage, what includes everything I just listed. I also want to share that when a modern-day microgrid or building energy management system are deployed today, they're built for safety by design and are the most advanced digitized part of an analog electrical distribution system the day they are connected. Modern building codes keep the edge of the Internet of Things safe, as well as consumer protection law. Schneider Electric is supportive of a well-trained and paid workforce, although it's not common to see a state legislature delegate their legislative authority to an unelected out-of-state group. If the outcomes outlined in the Penn State Safety Training Program were desired, we would support seeing them referenced by a date certain for a state agency to develop Nevada rules. Also, it's not clear, again, because of the strange juxtaposition, if the training is aimed at both outdoor and indoor electricians. The current definition of storage would cover plug-in low voltage UPS to high voltage megawatt installations to those air and water loads I mentioned before. Also, some legal consideration should be given for avoiding existing warranty agreements amongst manufacturers for devices already deployed or in the process of being deployed. To close, we would commend the body to consider asking the state PUC to conduct a technology review of how storage is organized behind microgrid or energy management platforms, and to create a tariff and rate schedule in those top 200 hours of peaking and hosting capacity and ancillary services on substation circuits, and adopt two-way communication system for distribution utilities for technologies that meet state policy goals regardless of type. An advanced policy would also recognize that distribution utilities need to invest more rate-based investments to digitize their analog distribution systems. I'm happy to answer any questions and appreciate the time.
All right, well, the next caller with the last three digits of 018, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You may begin now.
Thank you, Chair Harris, Vice Chair Brooks, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Matt Morris, M-A-T-T, with Holland Hart on behalf of Nevada. We've reached out to Senator Lang with some questions about the bill and its conceptual amendment. We look forward to working with Senator Lang to address our questions with SB 328. Thank you.
All right, well, the next caller with the last three digits of 716, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You may begin now.
Good afternoon, Chair Harris, Vice Chair Brooks, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Ryan Bellows, R-Y-A-N-B-E-L-L-O-W-S, and I'm the Director of Labor and External Relations for NV Energy. NV Energy would like to testify neutral on Senate Bill 328. We are currently reviewing the conceptual amendment, and we look forward to working with the bill sponsor on this bill, as we certainly support the expansion of energy storage in this state. NV Energy has emerged as a leader in energy storage. We have several large-scale battery storage projects that are being constructed, We will have over 1,000 megawatts of battery capacity by 2024. One of these projects is Gemini Solar, which is a 690 megawatt solar project in southern Nevada, which will bring an additional 380 megawatts of storage online. And it is one of the country's largest storage projects that is under development. We continue to study the benefits and the impact of energy storage on our system. And we know that as more of our renewable projects come online, energy storage will be a critical piece of the puzzle to ensuring that we can meet demand for our customers when these renewable projects are not producing energy. In addition, we know that energy storage can also be an important tool during periods of peak demand. NV Energy is committed to bringing on energy storage that makes sense for the reliability of our grid and also makes sense for our customers. We certainly support the safe construction of energy storage systems, and we know that the workers who have ESAM-TAC certifications are uniquely qualified to build these projects safely. Finally, I would mention that in our experience, we've seen that when a mandate or a target or a goal is in place that requires us to procure a certain quantity of energy, it can lead to inflated pricing from developers, which can also lead to higher prices for our customers. So we definitely look forward to working with the bill sponsor on this bill and the other stakeholders as this bill progresses. Thank you.
Will the next caller with the last three digits of 836 please slowly state and spell your name for the record? You can unmute yourself by pressing *6 if you're having trouble, and you may begin now.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jessica Ferrato. That's Jessica, F as in Frank, ERRATO. I am here representing SEIA, the National Trade Association for Solar. Through our 1,000 member companies, SEIA is leading the transformation to clean energy, creating the framework for solar to achieve 20% in the U.S. electricity generation by 2030. An important component of reaching those goals is energy storage, which goes hand in hand with solar technology. SEIA is coming in front of this bill today in the neutral position. We share Senator Lang's passion to expand solar and storage to meet Nevada's clean energy goals, with safety being the #1 priority. SEIA member companies complete a number of trainings and certification programs. We are willing to learn more, but are concerned a little bit about the certification program. With the bill's amendment, SEIA members are reviewing the amendments and feedback from the Contractors Board, and want to thank Senator Lang and the stakeholders involved. SEIA members' companies are not as familiar with the training certification as outlined in the bill, but look forward to learning more. We want to make sure that trainings are available to meet the demand and that employees can be trained safely and specific to individual systems that companies provide. Thank you for your time, and we will continue to work with Senator Lang and all stakeholders on the bill.
Will the next caller with the last three digits of 438 please slowly state and spell your name for the record? You may begin now.
My name is Julian Boggs. I'm the State Policy Director with the U.S. Energy Storage Association. The U.S. Energy Storage Association, or ESA, is the national trade association dedicated to energy storage, working toward a more resilient, efficient, sustainable, and affordable electricity grid as is uniquely abled by energy storage. We represent a diverse group of companies involved in deploying energy storage systems, and our members work with all types of energy storage technologies, including, of course, lithium-ion batteries. We are testifying today neutral on this bill. We certainly, as others, commend Senator Lang for bringing this forward and for the interest in energy storage. And we support target setting for energy storage. Recently, the Energy Storage Working Group, composed of members across our diverse Association developed a program model for energy storage target design, which we've published on our website and are happy to share with the sponsors. We generally align ourselves with the testimony from SEIA and share the general concerns about certification projects. I do briefly want to speak about safety and ESA's commitment to safety. Safety incidents related to grid-connected energy storage systems remain rare in the United States. Like all forms of energy generation and electric infrastructure, they require routine and diligent effort to manage risks effectively and protect the safety of first responders, which, of course, if others have said, is the top priority. Energy storage standards are continually evolving to incorporate a rapidly expanding body of industry operational experience and have been updated over the past 3 years and before that. And certainly, several folks have mentioned the National Fire Protection Standard Association Standard 855, as well as UL 9540A as really critical recent safety standards for battery storage. Ensuring safety is a constant, ongoing process. The industry has continued to improve and refine safety standards and practices, in incorporating lessons learned from events, including the event that has been referenced in Arizona, and adopting updated safety codes and standards. In conclusion, safety is a top priority for the energy storage industry, and we're eager to continue to working with the stakeholders, Senator Lang, members of the committee, to ensure that Nevada achieves aggressive energy storage goals while ensuring the safety and quality and performance of energy storage systems. Thank you, and thank you, Chair Harris and Vice Chair Brooks, for the opportunity.
All right. If there are any more callers who wish to testify in a neutral position for Senate Bill 328 and have not done so already, please press star 9 now to enter the queue. Chair Harris, at this time, there are no more callers wishing to testify in a neutral position for Senate Bill 328.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll quickly turn it back over to you, Senator Lang, if you'd like to make any closing comments before we close the hearing.
Thank you so much. I just want to start by thanking Mr. Stern, Mr. Adler, and Mr. Johnston for being on and helping me present this bill. I would just remind the committee that we're not trying to be prescriptive here, which is why we said let's wait till we get the IRP and then make our decisions based on a study about Nevada. And so I look forward to doing that. And we also look forward to working with stakeholders on Section 5 to address any concerns people might have and getting this bill to work session. So thank you so much and have a great day.
All right. Thank you so much, Senator Lang. We'll go ahead and close the hearing on SB 328, and I'll turn the gavel back over to our Vice Chair, Senator Brooks, for the hearing on Senate Bill 387.
Thank you, Chair Harris. I'd like to open up the hearing on Senate Bill 387. This will be presented today by Senator Harris, and it provides for the regulation of certain suppliers that provide an inmate calling service. Senator Harris, take it away.
All right. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Brooks and committee members. I'm Dallas Harris, representing Senate District 11 in Clark County. I'm here to present Senate Bill 387, which deals with the regulation of interstate calling services for inmates. Before going over the specifics of 387, I'd like to briefly explain why I believe this is an important bill, important for us to pass this bill. For many years, inmate calling services, both interstate and intrastate, were unregulated, and perhaps not surprising, there were many instances where the lack of oversight resulted in inmate phone rates that were unconscionably high. In Nevada, the legislature deregulated inmate calling services in 2007 and removed so-called competitive suppliers from the scope of the Public Utility Commission's regulation. Since then, the price of inmate calls has become a national issue, And in 2014, the Federal Communications Commission stepped in to cap the cost of interstate calls. However, the FCC lacked jurisdiction to regulate intrastate calls, which make up 80% of the calls from prisons or jails. Due to mergers, there are fewer companies offering inmate calling services, and this lack of competition has exacerbated the problem. As an example, in 2018, the average cost for a 15-minute phone call from a local jail was $5.74, as compared to the average cost of a 15-minute long-distance landline call of $1.50 or less. Ancillary charges for things like opening an account and receiving or paying bills can add 40% to the cost of a call from prison or jail. The FCC has called on states to address the issue of intrastate inmate phone charges, and in response, the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners released a statement in July 2020 calling on its members to address the problem of exorbitant inmate phone charges and to seek authority to review the rates in their states. Now, you may wonder why we care about how much an inmate is charged for a phone call. The answer lies in the innumerable studies that show the benefits and importance of maintaining family contact while incarcerated. Chief among those benefits is evidence of significantly reduced rates of recidivism, and equally compelling are the mental health benefits for the inmate and the positive impact on children of inmates from maintaining a parent-child bond. Allowing inmates to stay in touch with their families also helps them upon release to find jobs and housing and to maintain sobriety. Despite the benefits of fostering family contact, at least one survey found that nearly 70% of inmate respondents reported phone calls cost as a key obstacle to keeping in touch, and 1/3 went into debt to make phone calls. Furthermore, while state prisons generally do a better job of negotiating contracts and keeping costs down, local jails do not have the same staffing resources and may be more tempted to enter into contracts with high commissions as a means of generating revenue. Again, the studies bear out the often extraordinary high cost of calls from local jails. A 2018 chart by the Prison Policy Initiative shows the highest cost of a 15-minute call from a local jail in Nevada is $14.25. That's nearly $1 a minute. Nevada is not the only state grappling with this issue, and it seems pretty clear that without oversight and regulation, the situation is not going to resolve itself, and that's the motivation behind SB 387. With that background in mind, let me walk you through the bill's provisions. Section 2 defines correctional facility to include both the Nevada Department of Correction facilities, be they public or private prisons, as well as city or county jails. Section 3 defines inmate calling service as limited to intrastate phone calls from a correctional facility. Section 4 states a competitive inmate calling service must file an application with the Public Utilities Commission for approval of its rates. And the crux of this bill is Section 5, in which the Public Utilities Commission is directed to adopt regulations addressing inmate calling services, including procedures for setting rate caps, defining and limiting other ancillary charges, limiting taxes and fees that may be charged, and procedures for approving rates outside of established caps. Section 5 also makes clear that limits on rates, charges, taxes, and fees would not exceed the federal rate cap set by the FCC for interstate inmate calls. Finally, Section 5 requires an annual review of the rate caps and revisions as warranted. Sections 6 through 10 are conforming provisions. I'll note for the committee that we have an amendment posted on Nellis. It's a very small additional bit of language that would allow the Public Utility Commission to make sure that these providers are not just in line with the rate cap, but any other provisions that they may put in place pursuant to the rulemaking in Section 5. With me, Vice Chair Brooks and committee members, I have Debria Terwilliger from the Public Utilities Commission, who has been instrumental in working on this bill with me, and I would invite her to make a few comments at this time.
Thank you, Chair Harris, and thank you, members of the Committee on Growth and Infrastructure. I appreciate the opportunity to work with Chair Harris on this important piece of legislation. And I'm happy to walk through or address any questions that you might have or that Chair Harris might direct me to answer. Chair Harris covered the scope of the bill. The overall intent is to ensure that we're aligning ourselves for intrastate rates, which, as Chair Harris pointed out, the FCC's jurisdiction does not reach intrastate rates, and over 80% of inmate calls are intrastate in nature. And so we want to align ourselves with the FCC to ensure that there are rate caps and other limitations in place to provide for just and reasonable inmate calling services for the inmates and their families. And Chair Harris, I'm happy to assist with any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much. And Vice Chair Brooks will submit ourselves to any questions the committee may have at this time.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Thank you, Ms. Terwilliger. Good to see you. It's been a while since we've worked together in the legislature, but I think I have a question here from Senator Pickard.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Just a couple of quick questions, because my initial response when I first read this bill was why. Listening to Senator Harris's introduction, I think, okay, that's why. But there's always the other side of the coin. And so, as I'm processing this in my head, I'm thinking, well, why do they charge what they charge today? Are they, because this is obviously a separate system from the correctional facility system, which makes all the sense in the world. We don't want to give them the same system. So they've got certain hard costs, both installation, maintenance, those sorts of things that they've got to cover. And they probably don't have the same kind of usage that, say, you or I would have with one of our lines, where we're spreading that out over time. So is there any rationale behind the fees that they charge, or is this arbitrary like what we've seen in other contexts where it's, if it's in their account, they're going to take it kind of approach? Can you explain why they charge what they charge? I assume they're not here in support of this bill.
Senator Pickard, I'll start, and Mr. Terwilliger, if you'd like to jump in to supplement, please do. I can tell you it is not related to the cost of delivering the service. Most of our Nevada Department of Correction facilities are already under the cap of the FCC rate. And so there are a few providers who are charging what they can, not just because it's costing them a certain amount to provide the service. So I won't venture to give anybody a bad name as to what it is, but I can say it's not related to the cost of providing a phone call, the cost of a minute for the company. I'll also say that under this structure, any company would be able to go to the Public Utilities Commission and explain, this is how much our infrastructure costs. This is how much it costs for us to deliver the service. Here's the rate we are proposing in order to make sure that those rates are reasonable. I would suggest, however, this is a classic example of rent seeking by a few monopolies.
All right. I don't know if Ms. Terwilliger wants to chime in, but I just want to make sure that we understand, and I assume you've not talked to them about or asked them to justify for purposes of this hearing what their billing practices are. But if they didn't, shame on them. This is an existential problem, or if this is an existential problem, you would expect them to step up. Maybe we'll hear from them in opposition, but I would like to, at some point, explore that a little bit and see what's behind the billing. Is it truly arbitrary and unrelated to the cost of delivering the service, or if they have some justification? I think that would be great to get on the record.
And Senator Pickard, I'll say for the record, I think this bill allows them to put forward an application and justify those rates. And the Public Utilities Commission is very well versed in looking at the cost of infrastructure and delivering a service and allowing for just and reasonable rates. And so this would not preclude their opportunity to provide that justification, and in fact would require them to do so where they don't have that requirement now.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think that because they're unregulated, now they're going to fall back into a reporting mechanism that's going to increase the cost of delivery. And so it's that balance. But let's hope they step up and give us that information.
Thank you, Chair Harris, and thank you for the question, Senator Pickard. Do any of the other committee members have any questions on this Senate bill for Chair Harris or Ms. Terwilliger, excuse me? It does not appear as if we have any other questions from the committee members. So I will then go to the phones and look for anyone who is looking to give any sort of testimony in support of this Senate Bill 387.
Thank you, Vice Chair Brooks. Callers, if you'd like to testify in support of Senate Bill 387, please press star 9 now to enter the queue. Will the caller with the last 3 digits of 080 please slowly state and spell your name for the record? You may begin now.
Hi, Jim Hoffman, Hoffman, representing Nevada Attorneys for Criminal Justice. NACJ supports SB 387. In addition to the points made by Senator Harris, I'd like to add 3 pieces of context. The first piece is that because of COVID, jails and prisons have mostly ended in-person visitation. So these phone calls are literally the only way that a parent can stay in contact with their child, that spouses can keep in contact with each other, that an elderly parent can check in on their kid. So this is vital that this be accessible. The second piece of context, prisoners are by and large broke. If they're lucky enough to have a job, they're making 50 cents an hour. If the phone costs 25 cents a minute, that means they work for 1 hour to afford 2 minutes of precious phone time with their family. That's not reasonable. This is a captive market. They have no choice but to pay this. And the third and final piece of context I would provide is that this isn't just for people who are accused of crimes. As you may know, the Henderson Municipal Jail and other places house undocumented people. And those undocumented people have to use these same phone calling programs. So this isn't just a problem for people who are doing crimes. It's a problem for undocumented people. This is overall a very unjust situation. There's no good reason for this to be this expensive, and SB 387 would address this problem. So we urge your support. Thank you.
Vice Chair Brooks, at this time, there are no other callers wishing to testify in support of Senate Bill 387.
Thank you. Can we see if we have anyone in opposition to Senate Bill 387?
Certainly, Chair. Callers, if you would like to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 387, please press star 9 now to enter the queue. Vice Chair Brooks, at this time, the public line is open and working. However, there are no callers wishing to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 387.
Thank you. Can you see if we have anyone on the line who wants to testify in the neutral position on Senate Bill 387?
Absolutely. Callers, if you would like to testify in a neutral position for Senate Bill 387, please press star 9 now to enter the queue. At this time, there are no callers wishing to testify in a neutral position for the bill.
Thank you. So seeing that we have no callers, Senator Harris, if you wanted to make any closing statements on the bill.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Brooks. Just briefly, I want all the committee members to throw your minds back, way back, where minutes were the driver of your phone call, of your cell phone bill, right? Where you were capped at 3,000 minutes, and then you could add your 5 favorite friends and have them kind of 0 rated for the purpose of getting at your minutes. We have unlimited minute use today, and the key now is data, and there's a reason for that. It's because the cost of delivering a minute of voice phone calls is so low that it no longer makes sense to tie the business model to that. And so take that in mind and think about what it's like for a interstate phone call to cost more than a long distance phone call in 2021. That's something we've got to rectify, especially for those who need to stay in contact with their family for benefits to themselves and to society, for those who we know aren't making much money. So with that, I'll leave that on the table and close with that. Thanks so much, Vice Chair Brooks.
Thank you, Chair Harris. And so we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 387, and I'll turn it right back over to you, Chair Harris.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Brooks. With that, we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. BPS, if you could poll the line.
Thank you, Chair Harris. Callers, if you'd like to give public comment, please press star 9 now to enter the queue. Chair, at this time, the public line is open and working. However, there are no callers.
Okay, that will then conclude public comment. Are there any comments from the members before we adjourn? All right, seeing none, I'd just like to thank the committee members for hanging in there. I think 4 bills is the most we've heard in one hearing. We got it done in just a little over 2 hours, so I appreciate everyone coming, sticking through the meeting, arriving on time, and being great colleagues. Our next meeting will be on March 31st at 3:30 p.m. Until then, we are adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.